Well, Dr. Sims, can you just tell us a little bit about the purpose of these meetings you all have been having concerning the bond?
The North Marion area needs a lot of work, and we fixed up east and west side, so the North Marion, it's their turn to hopefully decide what exactly they want for their area.
Do you feel... Okay.
That's the main thing we're trying to decide, is what do people want up in this neck of the woods, up in this area.
Do you feel that the meetings so far have been pretty productive?
Yes, they've been very productive, but no decisions have been made. People are really split. Some want to fix up the old, and some want new schools.
Okay, I'm Jeff Wise with Blackwood Associates, MSCS Consultants. This is Jim Blackwood. He's president of Blackwood Associates. We have been the architectural and engineering consultants with Marion County Board for about 8 or 9 years now. One of the things that we had in the last public meeting was to discuss the cost of renovating Mannington and Middle School, Mannington Middle School and Monongah Middle School versus building new middle schools at Mannington and Monongah. The overall desire of the group at that time was to build 2 middle schools, one in the community of Mannington for 350 students, and one in the community of Monongah for 250 students.
No, 200.
200 students. I think we did the 250 on that.
250, yeah, you're right.
200?
Well, 200.
Okay, 200 students. And the issue was that when we were looking at building new schools, we obviously needed land. And so at that time, the board began a search for land availability in both communities. I think there was some requests, I'm gonna have my back to you guys, but there were some requests of any interest in the local area. There were a couple of particular parcels that were of interest. Those did not pan out as far as the owners wanting to sell. That being the case, in order to run a bond and to have the property identified in the timing that we needed to, I think the board at this point said, well, it's getting very tight in order to even consider a bond for 2 new middle schools. And if I'm speaking out of turn, just jump in. Given that the property needs to be identified on the bond call in order to do that. So we need at least, we figure 90 days prior to that bond call. And I think the overall consensus was to try to work that bond call at a normal election date so that there wouldn't be an additional cost. And with all of that timing involved, we could not pull together properties available for the building of 2 new middle schools. That being the case, we're here tonight, and I'm not sure what all the questions would be. What I'll do is go through a few particulars just to give you an update of what we may have presented last time. If there are any further questions after I go through a few numbers, you all are welcome to ask. At this point, one of the things that, and I'll kind of move back a little bit, but one of the things that we looked at was in the Comprehensive Educational Facility Plan, which you'll see as CEFP. We look as required by the state. Each county board looks at what the needs will be in the county for the next 10-year period. So we look at each school, at what those costs would be in renovating, and we looked at Mannington and Middle, pulling those out. The renovation cost of Mannington Middle School under that CEFP is $12,650,000. So in order to totally renovate the Mannington Middle School as it is now, and there's I should do an aside, there's a whole lot of square footage there that Jim's going to help me a little bit. How many square feet are in the building?
Well, you've got in the building now almost 109,000 square feet. For the number of students in there, you only really need a little less than 58,000. And what you have to understand is when we start, we being professionals that have to go through the West Virginia State Fire Marshal and Department of Education and so forth, when we start a renovation job, we have to do the whole building. We have no choice in the matter. And that's the way that the project would be reviewed, as a total building. So we would be renovating a building, and I know that 12,700,000, close to that, I know that sounds like a huge amount. But when you take a building of that age, over 100 years old, and you try to bring it up to current standards for safety and health, I have a concern that that would even be enough at this point in time. But
Well, and the way we develop those is properties or schools like JN Elementary School, where we did a total renovation at the school, brought it up to a current standard. We look at every element within the building and say, well, not only do we have to try to renew what's there, we look at sprinklering the building, coming in with new HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, air conditioning, meeting all the new ventilation requirements, all the new lighting requirements, drop ceilings, all that you could possibly do to an older school. So that's what's involved in the 12.6, 12.7 million. To build a new school for 350 students, under SBA guidelines, is 13.3 million.
Well, Jeff, if I could maybe step in a little bit here, and we'll show you in just a minute. He says under SBA guidelines, it is under SBA guidelines, but it's a lot more than that, because the school at 350 students does not meet the state economies of scale. So we're going to be building a large core area, something almost equivalent to what they have at the new West Fairmont Middle School and what we're building at the new East Fairmont Middle School.
I'll go ahead and jump to this.
Yeah, just go ahead and show it. This is a box, we did a box plan. This core area right here is essential to the school according to SBA requirements. But SBA assumes that this core area is going to be servicing at least 700 students. We're only going to be servicing 350 students here in the classroom space. And if you go to the next one,
Well,
Jeff.
just to jump in, now that's what economies of scales means as far as the School Building Authority, SBA, is concerned. They're saying that in order for that school to be an efficient, productive school, under their guidelines, you would have to have at least 750 students in order to build that thing and be efficient. What they have recently communicated to, as we understand, some of the board members, is that they would consider building a smaller student populated school if there was some involvement with local bonds and local funds. So that's why we got to this point. This particular floor plan is the Mannington Middle School. Again, it's 350 students. The core is designed for a larger group because a gymnasium is the size of the gymnasium, whether you have 2 students or 1,000 students. The gymnasium is a certain size, and it goes on to those other elements. So that's the core that Jim's talking about.
Yeah, and if you look at
And you want to jump to the
Monongah, and those are 2 different scale drawings, but the difference in the building is they have less classrooms because they only have 200 students as opposed to.
now we're building for 250. So instead of that core serving 750, now 350 at Mannington, now it's 250 at Monongah. So you get a little higher price on the new construction for 200 students than what we had originally estimated. So that's why you see under Monongah Middle School, $12 million for a new Monongah Middle School for only 200 students. 250 is what we show the size. And $13.3 million for a new Mannington Middle School. So even though it's 350 and 250, the 2 schools are pretty much in the same, well, 1.3 million separating them.
Price-wise.
Now that does not include site costs. The school building authority will not get involved with buying land.